Hi everyone, my name is Jack Snaith and welcome to the first podcast of my new channel. On today's podcast, I will be covering globalisation and diversity. Specifically, how has the English Premier League been affected? Can we even call it the English Premier League anymore? And how far has the women's game increased in popularity? Stay tuned to find out. What is diversity though? Diversity can mean many things. It can range from race, ethnicity, class and gender, though I feel most people would only remember the word diversity as being linked to race, but it means so much more. Globalisation can be described as the interconnectedness of the globe. Aspects such as social media has led to an increased level of globalisation, as people from across the world are connected through social media apps such as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. In the past, native football players tended to stay in their own leagues. For example, the English leagues were dominated by English players before the 1990s, with very few foreign players in the teams before. Maguire said that there are 5 global flows in globalisation: people, technology, economic, ideological and media. We can use this to explain why there are more foreign players in each of the top divisions today. It's because globalisation has increased, leading to an increased amount of transfers for players across leagues. Players such as Ljungberg, Thierry Henry, Vieira and Cristiano Ronaldo were some of the first foreign players to shine in English football. In the footballing world back then, a lack of globalisation meant that there were a lack of foreign football players. Ronaldo's transfer to Man United from Sporting was one of the Premier League's biggest signings since its formation in 1992. With Man United, he won 1 FA Cup, 3 Premier League titles and 1 Champions League. He also won a Ballon d'Or at the age of 23. Upon his return to Man United from Juventus, the fans were crazy over him, even those who don't follow Man United. His praise over a 4-1 win against Newcastle United gave Man United the hope of winning trophies again. This is another example of how foreign players have helped to improve the game, especially in England. To ensure that there are still English players that are able to break into the first team from the academy, the Premier League has a law known as the homegrown rule. The homegrown rule was put into place by the Premier League in 2015, with Greg Dyke as its leading figure in getting it passed. It was put into place to allow younger players to develop from an earlier age, specifically players who are England born. However, in some countries, such as those in South America, there is a lack of multiculturalism or diversity in their leagues. They have implemented a limit on the amount of foreign footballers playing outside of South America, as they prefer to have native players in their leagues. This may be likely because of how much emphasis they place on homegrown talent. Players such as Neymar, Messi, Pele, Maradona have come from South America and are unarguably some of the best players the footballing world has and will ever see. One can only speculate how their careers would have panned out if they had foreign players playing ahead of them, hindering their chances of first-team football. Brexit is also a factor which has affected the diversity of the sport to some extent. Players in the EU must apply for a work visa if they are to move to an English club from a foreign club. This has made it more complicated for clubs to get a transfer deal through quickly, giving other clubs the possibility of hijacking a deal. This complication derives from a points-based system which players and overseas workers must pass to be allowed into the UK. However, there is one positive factor in how Brexit has affected the English footballing leagues, and that's the increasing importance of recruiting domestically. Jordan Gardner of FC Helsingør said that the more sophisticated clubs are looking internally and thinking, let's do domestic recruitment really well. English clubs will have to do this even more after Brexit. Globalisation and diversity doesn't just include race, however. Gender is also a huge talking point in post-modern society, and the women's football is one of the biggest trends in the sporting world at the moment, especially in England, where in the past 20 years we have seen huge steps that have been taken to achieve a huge global audience. For example, from 2007 to 2015, the World Cups in this time period have low attendances compared to male football, averaging at around 25,000 to 30,000, despite England being a relatively decent side at the time. If we compare that to the past 3 years of women's football, the attendances have been much larger. In the 2023 World Cup, England's fans filled up the stadiums against Haiti and Denmark, with attendances of 50,000 and 44,000 respectively. A huge difference between the last two competitions. We can again use Maguire's theory of 5 flows of globalisation here through media. Media has been the biggest contribution to the growth of the women's game, due to large-scale promotions of the game and unifying a fan base behind the England players. I think that increased globalisation over the years has increased the popularity of women's sports. I also believe that the increase in diversity has led to an improvement to the football's top leagues, such as the Premier League, due to the big names that have been created, such as Ronaldo and Henry. I've been your host, Jackson. I'll be seeing you again very soon in my next podcast, where I'll be talking about agenda setting in sport, so stay tuned.